You'll find a Mets fan. Let's go. This is a Mets year for all your Mets here. Let's go. Bring it home. Bring it home. Bring it home
exciting, thrilling, awesome. Let's take a look.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets at Rob and another Mets Hot Stove Live right here on the channel. Hopefully everybody is doing okay. And before we get to anything, don't forget, guys, to hit on that like button. And if you're new to the channel, say what's up and let me know where you're from. And if you're a Mets fan or you're a fan of another team, say what's up. Do not be shy, guys. This channel is for everybody. Even though this is a Mets channel for Mets fans, it is welcome to everybody because there is always some good conversations to have if you're a fan of another team, because that's why conversations and why sports are great. And yes, this is the new hat on deck, the Shea hat from the 7 line. I got it yesterday. There we go. A little nice snapbacks. I really like my snapbacks. The 7 line. There we go. Nice and pretty. There we go, guys. There we go, guys. Alrighty. So, welcome to the channel, guys. Welcome back, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I just want to let you know before we get started with everything, all the topics that are on the corner of the screen, is that tomorrow, because the Giants are playing, and I know David and his Eagles, I see his little picture there. Because the Giants are playing at 6:30 tomorrow, I'm not going to do a 6 p.m. Mets hot stove because I'll let the Giants fans enjoy their game. I can't stand either of those teams. So if it was possible for both of them to lose, I would be very happy about that. But again, let them enjoy their game. And, oops. Yeah. You play 8:15. That's how late it is. They played that stupid game that late. Jesus Christ. Is it that late? Let's see. Hold on one second. Let me see something here. Oh, you're right. Okay. So excuse me. Sorry about that. I read that wrong. Good. So there will be a Mets hot stove tomorrow. It will lead right up to the Giants pregame. So 6 o'clock tomorrow, you'll enjoy another Mets hot stove. And for you Giants and Eagles fans, I will completely destroy you guys tomorrow because why else would I care for your two teams when I'm a Cowboys fan? So, and there's no such thing as football on Saturdays, because the teams that nobody cares about play on Saturday. Like, let's be honest, right? Sunday's the real football day, All right, so let me get that out of the way. I know I'm taking shots. I was taking shots at my friend, today, who's a big Giants fan at my job. So he got a lot from me. I was like, so how many touchdowns Brown's gonna have? Yeah, all right. And Jalen Hurts is, they think he's hurt, and then all of a sudden he'll be running all around the field and enjoying. I think the Giants are going to get blown out, to be honest with you guys. And this is coming from a Cowboys fan who can't stand the Eagles or the Giants. But I think the Eagles are going to blow them up, to be honest with you. Again, my Cowboys always find a way to lose in the postseason, in the playoffs. It's not the 90s anymore, so you can't live on that. So, Kenny, thank you for tuning into the channel, buddy. LFGM, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. Keep on coming back for more SoCal. I'm probably, you know what? Maybe I am, but let's be honest. I'm not a Giants fan. I'm not an Eagles fan. Again, they can both lose. Well, Ariel, I agree with you. Listen, I'm a Cowboys fan who's realistic, right? Just the same way I'm a Mets fan as I'm realistic. Like, honestly. Purdy, yeah. Let Purdy actually play a good defense, and he hasn't as of yet. Like, it's the same thing with Daniel Jones. Like, everybody's anointing Daniel Jones, who played a terrible secondary last week as well. And the Cowboys, look, they didn't even face a real team last week. So, yeah, exactly. Tony Romo. But hey, listen, if there was, real refs over there, let's be honest. Des Bryant should have caught that ball in Green Bay, right? That would have been a whole different ball game. But let's get away from football until tomorrow. We'll talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. Let's get into our New York Mets. And there's a couple of things that came out over the last day or two regarding a couple of things. Number one, Beatty and Alvarez. The possible contract offer that the Mets supposedly offered Zach Britton. And how close were the Mets and the Marlins in a trade? And it's very interesting to look at the players that were involved that could have been possibly going the Mets way and also the Marlins way. You guys probably heard rumors about this as well. But we're going to get into all of that. And that's the most important thing here, because for the most part, the Mets roster is pretty much set. And there's been a lot of indications that the possibility of Beatty and Alvarez not starting the season in the major leagues on the Mets 26-man roster is becoming more and more likely. But as I said a couple of times already, there's a bigger chance that Beatty has an opportunity to make the team rather than Francisco Alvarez. There's numerous reasons for that, and we'll get into that a little bit. So before we get started, we're going to go back to the way this channel always was, and to go back because the season's getting closer and closer, and we got to get them good vibes and good feelings. So we're going to start with saying what up to everybody, because on this channel, you get a shout out, right? Ken, Dominic, Volcano. Hey, long time, buddy. How you doing? Let's see who's there. I see a lot of Ken in here. We got Danny. We got Joe. It's your boy Home Slice. I love that name. Sean, member of Talking Mets and Rob. Christopher. John. Sean, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. John, a member of Talking Mets and Rob. Who else we got here? We got David. We got who else we got here? I know we got more people. Kenny, first time on the channel. Thank you for tuning in. SoCal. Barre, what's up? Thank you for enjoying my content. Keep on coming back for more. Ariel. Let's keep on going here. We got Ricardo. How you doing? Jose. I think there's two Jose's here. Yes, Jose Ramon, Jose Camacho. We got Alien. We have a couple more people. David, John, and Victor and David and Nadine. What's up, what's up, what's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in. And we are going to get started talking about, well, David, we're going to talk about Mauricio too when we talk about Beatty and Alvarez, and we're going to talk about it right now. So when it comes to Beatty and Alvarez, there was just a report. I was just reading it. Actually, Joe sent me this not too long before I came on. And this was about this is what is a tweet said. Mets considering many options to make room for the 40-man for Tommy Pham on the 40-man roster. He did pass the physical, so he's on the team, but they got to make room on the 40-man. You just can't put guys on the roster and just keep on adding. It doesn't work like that. And Victor, how you doing, buddy? So, recently the Mets have shopped Darren Ruff, but who the hell's going to take him? They were talking about DFA and a right-handed pitcher that's in the minors that's on the 40-man Taylor Salcedo, and a lot of other decisions that they could be making. There's a possibility that there could be a move soon if it's a trade, if it's DFAing somebody, and I don't think anybody is going to shed a tear if Darren Ruff gets DFA'd or even traded for a bag of balls, right? If you can trade James McCann for basically nothing, you can trade Darren Ruff for basically nothing, or a player to be named later like they did with James McCann and the Orioles. That's something that Darren Ruff could do because, let's be honest, Tommy Pham is a better overall player than Darren Ruff. Darren Ruff can play the corner outfield, but he's not very good. He is somewhat of a backup first baseman, but not very good. Tommy Pham is the guy where he can play all three outfield positions. He provides the speed. He's a good defensive player, and he's a guy, like I said, he's just like almost every other Met besides Lindor and Alonso that hit between 16 to 20 something home runs, and that's something where with Tommy Pham going to be on this roster, obviously as a fourth outfielder, and probably he's going to be more of a guy that gives days off to Marte to save his legs for later in the season. And probably get a couple of starts with Canna as well. But looking at the fact that Darren Ruff might be off this roster, that's one less guy we have to worry about in the platoon role at the DH position. And I think Tommy Pham and Daniel Vogelbach is a better platoon than Vogelbach and Ruff. Even though I don't like Vogelbach very much, he is not a terrible ball player, and Vogelbach looks like he can hit 30 home runs, but doesn't, right? He's an on-base guy that looks for walks and occasionally connects on something. Again, Tommy Pham is not something to go crazy about and start buying his jersey, but he is a solid ball player. He's a gritty, hard-nosed player, and sometimes the Mets need players like that. I think the Mets were too much of a they weren't. I didn't feel like they had the grit last year. They were really good, but I feel like they were missing certain things. Not saying that Tommy Pham is going to change everything, but you don't win a World Series without having 26 of the men on the roster producing somehow, some way. And unfortunately, the Mets did have a lot of guys that not even just on their 26-man, on their 40-man that produced last year to help this team win 101 games. But let's be honest, when at some point it came back to haunt us as well, right? At some point we had too many injuries, and the people that were replacing them became a big issue, right? The bigger issue was when Escobar and Guillermo went down, Brett Beatty had to come up because there was no other choice. And yes, Bryce, I will explain in a second when we get to it. That'll be later in the the thing that relates to Brett Beatty and other prospects as well. It's not going to happen, but there was some talk about it, which is very interesting to think about. And you have a better understanding of what the Mets are thinking long term and even in the present, which is very interesting. So when it comes to Beatty and Alvarez, I've been saying this over and over again. Do not be shocked that Beatty and Alvarez start the year in the minors. There was a report that came out today stating that Brett Beatty has the opportunity to make the team coming out of spring, and Alvarez there's basically almost a 0% chance he's going to make the major league roster. The only way Alvarez is going to make the roster is if he shows tremendous strides defensively at catcher, and he has a spring training like Pete Alonso did in 2019, where the Mets, the Pete Alonso gave the Mets no choice but to bring him up because he had a monster spring training. If Alvarez does that and his defense is good enough and gives the Mets no choice, the Mets will find a spot on the roster. But there's about a 99% chance that Francisco Alvarez is going to the minor leagues to start the season. It's not a demotion. It's just a guy who still needs a little bit more seasoning, and there's no reason why you got to rush a guy and possibly hurt him in the future if you do that. And that's something that it'll piss people off, but let's be honest, guys. If this guy's your number one overall prospect in all of baseball, don't mess with him. Let him learn. This team is good enough where if you need him in the second half, you want to bring him up, fine. But let's not hurt him where we're going to need him in probably a year or two, or even in next year, when it comes to him being up in the big leagues, being our starting catcher, and using that bat in that lineup. Brett Beatty, on the other hand, the reason why he has a shot to make the team is because he can play two positions. He can play third and he can play left field. Obviously, Brett Beatty is going to be a huge part of this team, and it's going to be even more. It's realized even more after we talk about the Marlins and possible Mets trade that almost happened. Brett Beatty can play left and play third base. The Mets could use versatility in that spot. And also, if you want to DH Escobar a couple of days to take him off the field, Brett Beatty is an option as well. But you also got Luis Guillorme as well. So it's not a big chance that Beatty will make the team coming out of spring, but he'll definitely get the opportunity. Again, I think it's similar to what Alvarez has to do. Beatty probably doesn't have to be, Pete Alonso in spring training to get the nod to come up north with the team, but he'll definitely have a better chance than Alvarez. And like I just said, left field, third base, and the Mets. I've been saying this, and Ken just put it up in the chat just now. I've kept on saying it. I think Beatty is going to be a better overall player than Francisco Alvarez. What do I mean by that? I mean, defensively, I think Beatty is going to come into his own at third base. And even if they actually decide to put him in left field, say if the Mets do get Machado next year, which I don't think is very likely, but it's still possible. Again, we don't know what Steve Cohen's going to do because of the fact that he's pissed off with the Correa situation. When he gets pissed off, he does things that nobody expects him to do and then goes crazy. So say if the Mets go out and get Machado, right? Well, you still got a young star in Beatty that you have to bring up to this team. You can't string him along anymore. Either you're going to trade him or you're going to use him. And most likely the Mets are going to use him. And there's a pretty good chance he's going to be a Met for a long time if he performs well. You can always put Beatty in left field, and you don't have to worry about him because he did play left field in the minors, and he played it a decent amount. Not as much as third base, but he can hold his own in left field. So when it comes to Beatty, I said this many times, and if you don't believe me, you can go back to any stream that I've done probably over the last year. I always said Brett Beatty is going to be a better overall player than Francisco Alvarez. Once again, what does that mean? One, besides the versatility, I think he's going to hit for average around 260, 270. I think he can be around. I don't think he's going to be a huge power guy. Again, he can be, but I'm gonna range him between like Lindor, like around 20 to 25, somewhere in that range, which is pretty good considering the fact that I don't think he's gonna be a huge home run hitter. I don't think he's gonna be a 30+ home run guy, but 20 to 25, no problem with me. And I think he's gonna be about an 80 to 90 RBI guy. Could be even more. I think he's gonna be a run producer. And again, if you bat between 260 and 270, that means you're putting the bat on the ball more often than not. And I think in those type of scenarios, you have a better chance of getting those RBIs because you put the bat on the ball as well and make the defense make the play. With Francisco Alvarez, I've said this a couple of times now over the last couple of weeks when people were talking about Alvarez coming up with the big club. I don't think Alvarez is going to hit very much for average. I think we're going to be looking at somewhere around the 235, maybe 240, maybe on a good year 250. I don't think you're going to get a lot of average with Francisco Alvarez. And that's where I come back with him when it comes to the fact that as a guy who is the number 1 overall prospect in baseball, I see that type of player as a Mike Trout, right? A Juan Soto, a Bryce Harper, a Manny Machado, guys like that, like superstars, right? Alvarez still isn't exactly what I picture a number 1 overall prospect in baseball, because the way I look at a number 1 prospect in all of baseball is a 5-tool player who is good defensively, who is great with the bat. And, he's the catcher, so, can he be good with the rotation? I mean, he has to be on the level of Pudge. He has to be on the level of, top catchers that we've seen over the years. And some of them, right now, like a JT Realmuto, like with more power, like something like that. But I don't know if he's going to do that. And having a guy that I don't think can be a 5-tool player, I don't see him as the number 1 overall prospect. Too many people, I think, and not saying that, I disagree with all the experts, so to speak. I just feel like a 5-tool player who is anointed the number 1 overall prospect in baseball should be better in more areas of those tools than he currently is. That makes no sense to me. And that's what worries me about that, because I think too many quote unquote experts fall in love with his bat, because if you're a number 1 overall prospect and you're not a good catcher, well, now you're a DH. What is that going to do for a team for the most part, right? All you're doing is clogging up the DH spot. Unless you're going to be Edgar Martinez, you're clogging up the DH spot. It's not like he's fast. He can't do anything else. He's too short to play first base. So, and he's too stocky. He probably never played first base in his life. There's too much that I think he's just I don't know. I don't know. And what concerns me is that is he going to be a guy that, and listen, Christopher, I agree with you. If he gives that type of stats, listen, that's no damn problem. But there's a reason why the Mets drafted a catcher that was ranked number 1 coming out of the draft in Kevin Parada. Don't think that was just a coincidence because they needed to restock their farm system. Restocking your farm system, you're not going to draft a number 1 ranked catcher in the draft when you got the number 1 overall prospect in baseball in a catcher. So don't think for a second that I think too many people believe that the Mets think that Alvarez is going to be a 5-tool type player. Again, I'm gonna put this out there, and I might be 100% wrong. And as you guys know, I will say that I'm wrong, and you guys can call me out on it, which I love that you guys do. I don't think the Mets are 100% sure what Alvarez really is, because once again, of course, the Mets would have to get a guy that is looking like he can hit 35 home runs to close to 40 home runs a year and might not be able to play behind the plate. And now he's going to be a bona fide DH. And now you got a 22-year-old, 21-year-old that's going to be an everyday DH, and he clogs up your DH now. Listen, I hope I'm wrong, right? I'd rather be wrong on I'm not saying necessarily criticizing Alvarez. It's just my opinion, right? We all got opinions. But, for a guy who is considered number one overall prospect, I can't necessarily say, like, I don't know how the experts got that. You're going to tell me there's not an outfielder or a shortstop or a third baseman or any other position player that's not a pitcher that isn't an all-around better player than Francisco Alvarez? That's what I don't understand. I just don't understand that. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's what frustrates me, because it's annoying that people, you see, the problem with these so-called experts is because they we have not heard that people who like Joe DeMayo and guys who scout these teams and are always looking at these minor league players, and they're just all in on these players, and they know everything about them, and they see them a lot, and they write about them, and they scout them, all this stuff. We never heard that Francisco Alvarez is a 5-tool player. We've never heard that. We heard that his bat is ready for the major leagues, which, again, I don't know how you make that assumption until he actually does it for a decent amount of time. But he rakes in the minors, right? He struggled when he got to AAA a little bit, but then he came on late before the Mets finally brought him up. The problem is the fact that I haven't found, and I looked, there wasn't anybody that said that Francisco Alvarez is a 5-tool player. So if he's not a 5-tool player, why is he the number one ranked prospect in all of baseball? You're going to tell me that there ain't a 5-tool player who's a position player that probably has more speed, who probably hits for better average, and I don't know. I feel like there's somebody else that could be a number one overall prospect. And I said this over and over again. Brett Beatty is going to be a better overall player than Francisco Alvarez. And again, if you have Alvarez as your number one overall prospect and he is not as good as with catcher, and his defense is not there, if he's a Gary Sanchez catching, which, I'm not saying he will be, but we don't know, right? If he's so good behind the plate, the Mets would have been the starting catcher coming into this year no matter what, with Neto backing him up. And that's where I think that we got to be careful on hyping this kid so much. And for a kid who's 20 years old, right? There's a lot of room to learn. But the Mets are in a spot where, how long are they going to wait? And no, Barry, I'm not talking about speed with catcher. The point is, if he's not a good defensive catcher behind the plate, he's a bona fide DH with no speed, with just power, and we have no idea if he's going to hit for average, which I don't think he will. And that's the problem. And Christopher, I agree. He's not a 5-tool player. If he's a 5-tool player, where is it? Because we always hear about the 5-tool player, right? The 5-tool player does everything from defense to offense, the smarts of the game, everything. Well, Jay, you know what? The dude is 20. That's fine. But there's 20-year-old that had no problem coming up and took the league by storm, right? It's not about Francisco Alvarez and his bat. The point is that we have a number one overall prospect that the Mets still aren't confident enough about his defensive capabilities. Because if they were, there would have been no Alvarez, and they would have brought him up to start as the starting catcher and have Neto as his backup. Aaron, that's fine. But again, we don't know if he's going to be a catcher, right? We don't know how good he can be behind the plate. Again, I'm not saying he's going to be Gary Sanchez. If he's good, decent behind the plate. Now, put it this way. If he has Mike Piazza defense, right? Which Piazza wasn't a very good defensive catcher, right? He was good working with the rotation, wasn't great behind the plate, had no arm behind the plate. Francisco Alvarez does have an arm, but we've heard all the stories already. We heard that he has problems blocking balls. He's not a very good framer. He hasn't really, perfected that as of yet. there's been indications that he hasn't still worked well with rotations as of yet. Now, that could be a language barrier. Well, there's one problem, and hopefully Omar Narvaez could help him, which will be a great thing. I think that's one of the reasons why the Mets signed him, to help Francisco Alvarez. But we're anointing a 20-year-old where we don't know what he's going to be behind the plate. If he's a decent to good, if he's a Tomas Nido behind the plate, maybe a little less defensive capabilities, but if he's a little less than Nido behind the plate, but he hits 25 to 30 home runs and hits 80 to 90 RBIs, then you're not going to worry about it. As long as he's not Gary Sanchez behind the plate, then we're fine. Right? We have no concerns. But for a guy who's never been, by the experts, saying he's a 5-2 player, we haven't heard that. And there's a reason why he's not a 5-2 player, because there's a pretty good chance that he could be a worse defensive catcher than he is a good defensive catcher. The bat's not going to be the problem, most likely. But we do have to know where Alvarez is. And don't think for a second that the Mets drafted Kevin Parada because they just wanted to have depth in their farm system. Why would you want to draft why would you want in like a 3-year span or a couple of years span, one in the international draft and one in the regular draft, where you're drafting top catchers? That makes no sense unless you think that there's a possibility that Alvarez could be a bust behind the plate. Now, if Alvarez can hit for the best of him, you put him at DH and you live with it. You just hope that he's an Edgar Martinez with the bat, right? And then Kevin Parada will come up and be your catcher, because Kevin Parada already has been coming at the top of all of baseball. He's the number 3 prospect as a catcher in baseball. So the Mets have the number 1 and number 3 catcher in all of baseball and 4 prospects. And I said this before, and I'll keep on saying it. Kevin Parada, and I think the Mets believe this too, Kevin Parada is going to be your starting catcher. Probably in a year or two. Because Kevin Parada, he is going to fly through the minor league system. He already is a better catcher than Francisco Alvarez. He's only going to get better. And Parada, I'm not going to say he's going to be a better power hitter, because that's just idiotic of me to say. But he's always been an average guy. He puts the bat on the ball. He doesn't have a lot of strikeouts in college, and even in the developmental part of early on in the minors for the Mets, and in single A, he didn't strike out a lot. He puts the bat on the ball, and he just got the smarts that you want from a player, specifically a catcher. And I think Alvarez does not actually have enough of that. And that's why I think the Mets drafted Parada, because I don't think the Mets are necessarily all in on Francisco Alvarez. I don't think they trust him enough to be their catcher of the future. Now, the bat, if it was only the bat, we would have no problem. But it's not just only the bat. You can't have a butcher behind the plate, and because he just has a good bat, right? The reason why Gary Sanchez lasted as long as he did behind the plate for the Yankees was because he was hitting home runs and he was hitting well. But as soon as he stopped hitting well, it wasn't worth him being behind the plate. That's where the Mets are kind of balancing this act a little bit with Francisco Alvarez. And Alvarez is a better hitter than Beatty. No, he's not. You're looking at only power. Overall, Beatty's going to be the better hitter, because I don't consider a better hitter by just hitting home runs over the wall. I don't want a 213 hitter that hits 30 home runs. What does that do for me? He strikes out 250 times and then only hits 30 home runs. He's basically a guy who hits a home run or he strikes out, right? Beatty is probably going to be projected as a 270 hitter who hits 20 home runs to 25 and can knock you 75 to 80 RBIs. That's a player that I would take every day of the week. If you gave me 9 of those guys in the lineup that bats 265 to 270 with 20 to 25 home runs and 75 to 85 RBIs, I'll take all those players than a guy that can just hit home runs and bats like 220. That does nothing for me. And yeah, again, committee, everybody keeps on talking about Mauricio, but just think, in a 3-year span, Mauricio was one of our top prospects, right? He was our best prospect a couple of years ago. Now he's out of the top 5, and he's out of the top 100 in Major League Baseball ranked prospects. And that's not saying that, he's fell because he hasn't played well. He has. But the Mets fall into their own spot where the trajectory that they had for Mauricio, we all assumed, when we have Rosario and Jimenez, remember, we had all these shortstop prospects, right? And then before we traded for Lindor, it was like, okay, maybe Rosario could be that center fielder. Jimenez looks like he can project as a second baseman. McNeil can go to the outfield, and Mauricio will play shortstop. Well, the Mets trade Rosario and Jimenez for Lindor. They sign him. Now Mauricio doesn't have the shortstop position. No problem. All right, cool. Third base. Well, then the Mets, draft Beatty, and he becomes one of their top prospects. The Mets also had Vientos. So third base is clogged. So Mauricio can't play there. You got McNeil, who is looking like he's going to get an extension with the Mets, so he can't play second base. The Mets have never even thought about putting him in the outfield. So where is Mauricio going to play? No matter how good he might be, where is he playing? First base? Nope, ain't happening. Pete Alonso. Even if you wanted to do that, right? The outfield? I don't know. He never played there in his life. He played infield his entire life when in the Dominican. And then even in Dominican Winter Ball, he played third and he played short. And a little bit of second. He's not playing outfield. So, and then you got Nimmo, so he's not playing center field. You got Marte for a couple of more years. And then you got Alex Ramirez in the minors, who is projected to be an outfielder, possibly a center fielder. And then in a couple of years, you might move Nimmo to a corner outfield. So there is no reason. Where are you going to play Mauricio? The Mets, and remember, this is not, it's just crazy to me because we keep on talking about Mauricio, and I keep on saying this over and over again. The Mets are using Mauricio for a big trade at some point. I'm telling you that right now. Because Mauricio was blocked in every position you would want Mauricio to play. And if it comes to the point where you might need that extra bat or that big arm, you don't know about any injuries, but you need that. Say if Scherzer goes down, you need that top of the rotation type of guy. Maybe Mauricio is the guy you trade to get that top of the rotation guy along with Verlander or something like that. Mauricio has been on the block probably since the Mets signed Lindor. And I keep on saying that. And that's not a fault of anybody because of the fact that when Mauricio was drafted, Cohen wasn't the owner. And we keep on looking at the same issue where is Mauricio playing? As much as you want Mauricio, and that's why the Mets completely screwed up at the trade deadline when they had Mauricio and Vientos as the trade chips that teams wanted, where you could have got a bat and an arm, probably mostly for Mauricio. You could have done that. And as good as this team was last year, they needed something else in that lineup and another bullpen arm. And if they would have got the right guy, because they didn't want to trade anybody in their top 25 for their prospects, that's why the Mets didn't get anybody. That's on Billy Epler. Mauricio was just, he's just losing value by day. Because teams know the Mets have nowhere to put Ronnie Mauricio. So why would the team not ask for Mauricio? And they know the Mets are just letting him wait there and leave him there for what? Use him for a trade. That's why last year was a debacle at the trade deadline, because I kept on saying it. There was too many people on this channel that kept on saying, oh, you can't trade Vientos. Oh, the positionless player in Vientos, who is projected to be a DH at this point. And now he is basically the odd man out. And Mauricio's the same way. sooner or later you got to use Mauricio in a trade because his value is very high right now, especially with what he did in the Dominican Winter Bowl and played 3 different positions. He's very valuable. Now, at the moment, I don't see any trades going to happen, but at the deadline, if you need something of significance, Mauricio is your biggest trade chip. That's what you have to do. All right, so next up, the Mets offer contract to Britton. There was some rumors and there was a couple of tweets out there that the Mets have offered Britton a contract. I can't confirm that or not. I tried to look for it again, and I don't know if it was just a crap account, a fake account. I wasn't sure. I couldn't find it again, so that's just me. Well, Mike, no, because here's the problem, right? You got Beatty, who's going to be your third baseman. You got McNeil, who's still going to be at second. You can't put Mauricio at short. Beatty's going to be your third baseman. So that's the problem. No, Mike, I'm not saying you have to give him away. I'm not saying the Mets give Mauricio away, but there was an opportunity to get anybody you wanted. You don't think a guy like Josh Bell, or at the time, people wanted JD Martinez, people wanted Josh Bell, the big bats that people were looking for at the trade deadline, right? You don't think a team like Washington wouldn't have taken Ronnie Mauricio for a Josh Bell? I know that doesn't balance out because it's the top prospect for a pretty decent bat in Josh Bell, but that's the type of move that you have to take the risk on because Mauricio is just collecting dust in the minor leagues. You got to use those assets eventually. That's why when people were saying, "Oh, the Mets are doing a great job by not trading prospects away," well, sooner or later you have to do something. There is no team that win championships that don't give away prospects, even in the offseason or at the trade deadline to get better. Right? Every team, the Nationals did it in 2019. You got the Braves did it in 2021. Last year, even the Astros did it. And look what the Braves did. The Braves, every offseason, seemed like they traded a couple of prospects to bring in a guy that is a little cheaper, and then they sign him to a big deal. And that's something that you have to keep. You have to look at it that way. Sooner or later, you have to take that risk. Even if Mauricio becomes a star, but if that one piece that you get in 2023, say, put you over the top, then who cares? Right? Do you think the Cubs care that they traded Gleyber Torres when they needed Chapman? No, because they won a championship. At the time, Gleyber Torres was one of the best prospects in all of baseball. And that's what I don't understand. Like, you have to take that chance every now and then. The Mets didn't take a chance last year at the deadline, and it burned them. When they had the opportunity to use Mauricio in any deal they wanted, you're going to tell me no team is going to take one of the better shortstops prospects in baseball and Mauricio, who can play multiple positions and looks like he already has the bat to be a major leaguer? Most teams would have took that, even if it wasn't an even trade where, like I said, a Josh Bell. Would you have gave Mauricio for Josh Bell? You know what? If it put us over the top, maybe that, I'm not saying Josh Bell is the end all be all, but maybe Josh Bell in the Mets lineup would have catapulted them to win a couple of more games in September. And that's where the Mets went wrong. You have to take risk every now and then. Right? There was Cubs fans that were pissed off that they traded their number one prospect for a closer in Chapman. But you know what? They weren't complaining after they won the World Series. Well, Mike, but that's the thing. If you never take that chance, you're not winning. All right? There's never a team that stays packed the entire year and wins a World Series. Sooner or later, it's either that big move in the offseason or it's at the trade deadline. The Mets had the opportunity, which were one of the 2 or 3 best teams in all of baseball last year, at the deadline, and were in first place comfortably. It wasn't about the division at that trade deadline. It was about what can we get to put us over the top for a World Series run. That's the problem. And they didn't do it because Billy Epler And the front office was patted themselves on the back for keeping all their top 25 prospects. And all it got them was a wild card out. That's where it got them. And I'm not saying that trading for a Josh Bell or trading for whatever bat you needed would have made the difference. But sooner or later, you have to take a chance. And it's not like Mauricio, the Mets trade Mauricio, and the farm system is going to be blown up, right? You still got Alvarez, you still got Beatty, you got Parati, you got Ramirez. You got a top 10 that is still really damn good. You got the Jet Williams who you drafted. You got Matt Allen that's coming back from the injury. You got Ziegler. You got Tidwell. You got a really good top 10 farm system. And you already drafted. Your draft class last year was number one overall in all the out of all the teams. So Mauricio is not hurting your farm system. He is useless on this team. He has nowhere to play. Not saying you have to give him away for a bag of balls. But what if that Josh Bell bat would have made the difference? I guarantee Josh Bell would have been better than Vogelback, would have been better than Ruff, would have been better than Escobar than he was until he hit September. I guarantee you he was better than any catcher that we had offensively. That's where the Mets went wrong. You know, Josh Bell didn't play great with the Padres, but you know what? When it came to playoff times, who was hitting that home run off of Scherzer? Yeah, it was Josh Bell, right? Well, Jose, I agree with that. But again, here's the thing. The point of the matter is the Mets aren't doing that, right? If they would have done that, they would have done that last year. They're not doing it. And that's what I'm saying. You're wasting Alvarez when you had an opportunity, you know. And Mike, you said this earlier, right? You said this earlier. You said you don't trade prospects in January. I agree with you. But at the trade deadline, when you know where your team is, where the Mets were in first place in the division comfortably. We're one of the best 2 or 3 teams in baseball, record-wise. And every team that was top 5 in all of baseball made trades to make them better. Right? The Mets got Givens, Vogelback, and Ruff. That's embarrassing. That should not happen for a team that was what Billy Epler did was thinking was, you know what? Look how good this team is without any moves. Even though we needed, we had no offense from DH, no offense from catcher, no offense from third base until September when Escobar came around. Josh Bell, not saying that he was going to go crazy, but he would have been better than any of those guys in August. And it could have made the difference of 1 or 2 games that the Mets could have used in that division, that playoff series against Atlanta that decided the division might have not mattered. And that's the fluctuation of 1 or 2 games. Not saying Josh Bell was going to be an all-star, but he would have been damn better than anybody else. And why would you care about Mauricio getting traded when he's pointless on his team? He wasn't going to help last year on this team. He's probably not even going to be a part of this team, even if the Mets don't trade him, and he's in the minors. It's pointless. And that's what I don't understand. No, Mike, it wasn't to afford the price. Rizzo, the GM of the Nationals, did not want to trade him to the Mets. It was already on record. Look back at it. Mike Rizzo, the GM of the Nationals, said he is not trading him within the division. He said that. And definitely not the Mets. He said that. Had nothing to do. If the Mets wanted to put a package together, they could have put the top 4 prospects in all of baseball for Juan Soto. And then people would have still bitched about that for getting rid of all your prospects. That wasn't happening because of Mike Rizzo of the Nationals, who wasn't trading them within the division. And yeah, I heard that trade with Luis Arraez for Pablo Lopez. That's a good deal for Miami, which is very interesting. Because if you look at their lineup's pretty decent. And they're going to be a pesky team that just annoys everybody in the NL East. Don't be surprised if the Marlins, hit a couple of teams in a row, beat up on the NL East a little bit, because they're going to be that team where you're going into a series and you need to take 2 out of 3 and they slap you in the mouth. And that goes for all 3 teams here. Look at last year, right? The Mets manhandled the Marlins last year. It was great, finally. But they're always that team. Even if you look back in the records, the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets, they have problems with the Marlins. It's just always been that way. Last year was an anomaly, and the Marlins team is not bad. They got very good pitching, which we'll talk about in a second with the trade. And their lineup is pretty decent. They don't got a lot of stars on that team, but they got a lot of pesky players, ones that you just can't freaking stand. And they're going to be annoying to deal with for sure. Well, Mike, that's not true because if we're gonna talk about this right now. Let's see. I was just looking at something. Well, Mike, I don't think it was the whole thing. What Epler was doing, the philosophy, what he was trying to do at the DH spot wasn't a bad idea. It was the wrong players, right? Or put it this way, right? We tried a platoon with Davis and Smith. It didn't work. The lefty-righty combination. I don't like platoons at DH because I think it's stupid. I made this point many times during the season and in this offseason. When Vogelback was hot in Milwaukee, in it was August, I believe, or early September, right? In Milwaukee, he was red hot. He had about 2 or 3 home runs. He had like 6 or 7 RBIs. He was hitting the ball all over the place. Then we went to Oakland after that series. Oakland pitched 4 lefties in a row. The hot batter in Vogelback had to sit because he couldn't hit lefties, and Darren Ruff got 4 starts in a row. That's not a philosophy. That's not a recipe for success. So the philosophy is stupid on how that worked. That's why platoons don't work. Give me a hitter that bats 260 against lefties and righties and got popped against those pitchers. There's sometimes where a hitter might hit a couple more home runs against a righty than a lefty, but still hits for average against those two guys, against a righty or a lefty. That was the problem with platoons, and it never works. It's stupid. Because if you're going to have a guy, if one guy's hot and you're going to play him 4 or 5 games in a row, and then here comes a lefty, Darren Ruff, who sat for 5 days, is now going to get a start. What do you expect from a guy like that who just sat for 5 days and seen no live pitching? It's a stupid philosophy that doesn't work, right? Billy Epler should know better, considering the fact he was in the American League under Brian Cashman with the Yankees and then a GM of the Angels. You don't platoon DH. Now, if you want to give rest to guys on the field and platoon the team that way with the DH, I'd rather do that than having Vogelback and Ruff get starts based on who's pitching. It doesn't work. It's stupid. It didn't work. It blown up in our face twice in one season. It does not work. All right. Hopefully one of these kids step up. Let's hope so. But I'm gonna tell you this right now. Don't be shocked if Beatty and Alvarez are in the minors to start the season. Brandon, that's true. Let's see. All right, so we talked about the Britain thing, and I want to talk about this Mets trade or the possibility of a Mets trade that didn't happen. Just give me a second. Let me find it. Okay, so before the Mets got involved with Correa, the Marlins were trying to trade for Brett Beatty from the Mets for one of their young starters, not Alcantara. It was Edward Cabrera or Jesus Luzardo. 2 pitchers that are extremely good, got a very high upside, but they wanted Brett Beatty. And the Marlins kept on going back to the Mets. They offered any of their young starters other than Alcantara. And Cabrera and Luzardo are probably second best in the rotation compared to Alcantara. Now, I think the Marlins were trying to just get Brady because obviously Beatty's going to be a really good player. Everybody assumes that. That's why people are trying to trade for him. But if they would have asked for, I don't know, if they would have asked for Mauricio for Cabrera or Luzardo, I might have done that, because one of these two pitchers, I think are going to be. I don't think they're going to be aces, but they'll definitely be a really good number two, if not really, really good number two, and at the very least a solid number three. And again, for Mauricio, who you have no place for, to get a pitcher that has a huge upside, but is definitely can be a part of your rotation from years to come, I think would have been a decent trade, but not for Beatty. And a couple of times before the Correa stuff happened, the Marlins tried to get Beatty for, and I'll read it right. It said, the Marlins tried a couple of times to acquire Beatty, both before and after the Mets Carlos Correa deal fell through. The Marlins were prepared to offer one of their young starters, Edward Cabrera and Jesus Luzardo. So that's something that you have to look at and say, all right, I wouldn't do that deal either, right? Now, if it was Mauricio for one of those two pitchers, we can have a conversation, because again, Mauricio is mostly a shortstop that could play third, possibly second, and those are blocked by numerous players. So if you can take that to your advantage and have a possible rotation arm that could be in your rotation for a couple of years, maybe even longer, and could be at the top of your rotation and very young and controllable and cheap, that gives you ways to do other things outside of your rotation. And I see why the Mets were reluctant, because I wouldn't trade Beatty for any of those two guys, even though I like those two guys. It's you can't give up Beatty, because Beatty is more likely to be a third baseman next year. Mauricio, we have no idea. We've been talking about Mauricio for a couple of years, and every year he gets blocked by another spot, a person, either a prospect or somebody the Mets signed, and he's just waiting there, doing nothing. And again, if the Marlins would have said, we like Mauricio, take one of our young guys, Cabrera or Luzardo, I probably would think that the Mets would probably give Luzardo, because he's a lefty. Doesn't throw as hard as Cabrera, but pretty damn good. He had a solid season. Actually, I want to check that out really quick. Jesus Luzardo. Alrighty. All right, here we go. Let's check what he did. So he had a 3.32 ERA. Pretty damn good. Not great, but pretty good, actually. And actually, let's see. Yeah, he got a couple more years of control. He had a good year. Threw 100 innings. He was 4-7, which wins don't really matter. 18 games. 120 strikeouts and 100 innings. So that's a little, what is that, about 2 strikeouts per inning. So he's a strikeout guy too. Again, doesn't throw as hard as Cabrera. And let's just check Cabrera real quick. All right, let's see. And Edward Cabrera had a 3.01 ERA. So both of these guys are really good. They got dominant arms. Cabrera has a lot more control than Luzardo. And he had 71 in the third innings, had 75 strikeouts, so a little more than a strikeout in an inning. So, again, both of these guys are really good. Listen, you would want one of those guys to obviously in your rotation, but not for Beatty. Mauricio, I would really think about it. Either one of them would be very good. I think the Mets would have took Luzardo because he's a lefty, but Cabrera seems like he has more upside than Luzardo, but you can't go wrong for either one of them. Mike, I agree. Beatty is a situation where if the Angels come calling and say, listen, Ohtani's on the block, what are you willing to give? Now Beatty's on the table. You just have to do that, right? But other than that, no. It's not happening. All right, so that was the trade that the Marlins tried to pursue against the Mets. And you know what? Good job by the Mets for listening, number one, because I guarantee the Mets probably came back and says, listen, we're not giving away Beatty. If you want to talk about another prospect, and I guarantee you the Mets brought up Mauricio. guaranteed they brought it up. I don't think the Marlins were going to go there because I think they do have a young shortstop in their system that they're very high of. So it doesn't really work for the Marlins to do that. So, but definitely, I guarantee the Mets probably said, what about Mauricio? Because I think the Mets would have made that trade. If it was for Mauricio, for one of those two pitchers, I can assure you that would have probably been a better talking point for the Mets than it was for Beatty. So, all right, guys. So it's almost time to call it a night. Once again, guys, if you want to become a member of the channel, do it soon, because once the season starts and you're a member during the season, you don't get all the perks that you would get during the off season, because being a member in the off season, once you get a little bit of a discount too, you're in the running for every giveaway that is throughout the entire season. You don't have to do a super chat. You don't have to donate to the channel, nothing. The subscribers that are not members would have to donate to the channel to gain an entry. You are automatically in the entry for every giveaway that I give to the channel. And also, you're going to get access to the videos that I post that won't go public. You will get it first before it goes public. And you also get all types of other things. You get the Mets emojis, the channel emojis that I make. And I make new ones every year. I got to make a couple of one. I had to delete the DeGrom one. I'm gonna probably put Senga. I'm gonna put a couple of other ones. Regarding I'm gonna try to put player names as well. For custom emoji, so you guys can have that for the season. So there's a lot of perks you get for becoming a member. There's going to be live streams during the season for just your members. Again, the hard thing about doing live streams for members is that you need at least 20 to 25. I think I have 15 about now to actually do live streams that would actually get enough people in the live stream to, keep it going, to do a live stream for, to get that perk. So once you do that, all you got to do is click on the join button, or just go to the channel page and click on become a member, or the join button, or the membership tab, and you can go right to it and pick your membership. And that's where we are with that. So once again, guys, if you haven't hit that like button, please do so. The people that missed this stream, the stream will be at the top of the list once it is posted on YouTube, and people can watch it later on. And the more likes the stream gets, the more it stays at the top of the list for people looking for this type of content. So, all right, guys, we got Beatty and Alvarez. Possibility that both of them might end up in the minors starting the season. The Marlins asked for Beatty in a trade for Edward Cabrera or Jesus Luzardo. The Mets said no. We like those pitchers, but we're not giving up Beatty for them. Smart move. There was some rumors and a tweet that maybe was not a real account, but I couldn't find it again. Maybe that's just on me. But there was some reports that saying that the Mets offered Britton a contract. I don't know if that's 100% fact. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't want to think people say that I said that and it was wrong. I'm not 100% sure. I wanted to make that known. And of course, we're almost a month away, a little more than a month away for the first spring training game. We're only about 3.5 weeks away for pitchers and catchers reporting. So, no name, I don't know. There ain't many, and I don't think the Mets are going to make any more trades. You're probably going to see another bullpen arm, and that's probably basically it. And somebody might get traded like a Ruff, or somebody might get DFA'd like Ruff, or another guy on the 40-man to make room for Tommy Pham, who the Mets just signed. So, guys, with that said, once again, hit on that like button. If you're a new subscriber, don't be shy. Say what's up. And even in the comments later on, in any of my videos, I usually respond to most people. So, with that said, hopefully you guys enjoyed the hat. It's another hat to the collection. I think I got enough. Let's see. This is only a handful right now, right? I got a lot. Like, they're all stacked here on my desk. So, once again, guys, I appreciate you guys tuning in to Mets Hot Stove Live Friday, January 20th. We're here. We're getting closer to what we all love, and that's Mets baseball. Trying to take over the NL East and make sure that the Phillies, the Braves, or anybody else who gets in our way, we knock them on our ass in 2023. Because you know what? It's about time the Mets show some damn force and don't don't relinquish the division and get to the playoffs and show what we should be doing last year. And we're going to start it this year, guys. I'm telling you, I have a really good feeling about this team. Even though we kind of were disappointed with Correa, but I think this team, I think too many people are throwing us down and are not giving us enough respect when it comes to how good we actually could be. And you know what? Let them not do that, because all year last year, we didn't get the respect we deserved. Yeah, we didn't win the division, but we were still one of the better teams in baseball. Let everybody anoint the Braves, anoint the Phillies, and we come up and we punch them in the face this year, guys, because that's what it's all about. Once again, guys, if you're a Giants fan, good luck. If you're an Eagles fan, I guess good luck. Again, somebody has to win. So, I'm just going to watch the game for kicks and giggles because I'm not a Giant fan and I'm damn sure not an Eagles fan. But if you're a Cowboys fan, let's go Cowboys. Let's beat those Niners. And once again, I'm going to do a Mets hot stove tomorrow. So it's going to lead somewhat into the Giants game. And Sunday, there will be no the Shea Bridge show because the Cowboys are playing, and I will be at a bar hanging out with one of the Cowboys bars in New York, hanging out there watching the game. So everybody, have a great night. Stay safe. Enjoy NFL football Wednesday. Have a good night, guys. Ken, shut up. Leave my Cowboys alone. God, I hope the Giants choke. I don't like the Eagles, but you know what? I want the Giant fans to mope. Sorry, I love you guys, but listen, I got to stay away from them Giants, right? Let's go away. Danny Dimeless can get beaten up tomorrow by the Eagles, and then there we go. So with that said, everybody have a good night. As always, Mets fans, let's go Mets. Good night, guys. See you next time.
You'll find a Mets fan.